All right, let's move on to our Academy training segment. We are going to be talking tonight about taking the initiative. Welcome back to our Academy training segment. We are going to be taking the initiative tonight. When should you? Why should you? How should you? And we got Alex as our regional professor to kind of help walk us through this. He gets to basically tell me when I'm wrong and why I'm wrong. So
never take the initiative. It's a trap.
Yeah,
that's false.
Don't ever take the initiative. Don't. You're telling me don't take the initiative? Damn it. I thought you told me to always take the initiative, Alex. Why are you now telling me not to take the initiative?
I take the initiative before I even play any cards.
You're like, yeah, I'm just going to take the initiative. Thanks. You can have it. Whatever you want to do. Against Sabine, you're like, I'll play 6 units today, and I'll just take the initiative.
Yeah.
All right. To kind of kick this off, so we came up with a couple of different things, right? So, like, one of the things I wanted to do with this segment is I wanted to talk a little bit about why we're taking the initiative, right? When should you do it? How should you do it? And I don't, this is really just going to kind of be, this is, again, our Academy training segment is essentially designed to kind of help work through and help people learn playing the game. So this is not like, we're not going to go into some complex detail of like when you take it with Pelp or when you would take it with Iden or when you take it with Sabine specifically. But what I've done is thrown a few examples in there. And of course I use Pelp because I have a bad habit of playing a lot of Palpatine, thanks to Alex, actually. And so a lot of the times, so there's times when you want to take the initiative and you just go, well, should I or should I not? Should I be doing this or should I be playing cards? Should I be taking it because I'm going to die? Should I not be taking it because I'm not going to die? Am I in control? All these questions, that's kind of what I want to talk about tonight. So to kick it off with is really your first turn, right? So in X-Wing, it was not turn 0, because turn 0 is when you would resource your cards. This is essentially your first turn. What do you have? You already did your mulligans. You've already done your stuff. Hopefully you got a 2-cost card in there that you could play turn 1. Otherwise, you're just taking the initiative, right? Like, that's a simple one. So really the bigger question is that you have to talk about, right, is turn 1 is really nothing. Like, if you go first, you play a card or you take the initiative, right? Alex, is there ever a time that you could play a card on turn 1 and you say, nope, I'd rather actually just take the initiative?
I mean, it really kind of depends on what, like, deck and what cards you're playing. There's a couple times where it's like you actually have to make interesting decisions if you're playing like Sabine leader, right? If the initiative is more valuable to you than pinging one off each other's base. That's the most common one where you're just like, that's an actual decision point when I play. Or maybe like Luke, if you got like an R2D2 or Alliance Dispatcher, you have to weigh if it's worth putting a shield. More so on R2D2 than it is on Alliance Dispatcher, because he almost always just windmill slap that shield token on the Alliance Dispatcher. But if like you have R2D2, you're just like, well, if I play R2D2, opponent plays a card, do I put a shield on R2D2 and then I'll just lose the initiative? What are they going to do? But if it's against like Sabine, it's like, well, if I put the shield on R2D2, are they going to ping the base? They played a TIE fighter with Vader. Is it worth putting a shield now on my unit? Or are they just going to ping it off and I'm going to take one on my base? Are they going to do that anyways? Should I wait, try to pass and have them do the Vader swing and then I put the shield on there? So there's actually a little bit of very specific things you have to consider if you're playing those kinds of styles of deck.
Yeah. And I think one of the things here is like one of the big things here too is like, and you have the same thing with Pelp, right? Like technically with Pelp, you could I could play Death Trooper, ping it, and ping your shield off if I really don't want you to have that shield. I don't know if I care if you have the R2D2 as much as I care if you have Alliance Dispatcher, because that Alliance Dispatcher is gold for a shielded Alliance Dispatcher is gold for especially in early.
Yeah, that's something you actually have to take out.
Yeah. Otherwise, unless you're Pelp, then I don't care quite as much. But yes, I agree. Like you have to be very careful with that one, because it just lets you play. But that's the thing. Like too is if if you've already played all your resources, who cares? Just take your initiative. But like if you're the Sabine player and in hand you have like ambush damage, or I guess I don't want to call it ambush because that's actually a keyword here, but like if you have a fleet lieutenant that allows you to activate. So I'm sorry, and I apologize because in Destiny we called it ambush, right? When we would activate a character early. So they changed the terminology on us and it sucks a little bit. But if you have a fleet lieutenant that lets you activate for 5, do you care about the 1 ping damage? Or would you rather just be able to go first because you're playing against a control deck or a deck that has something that can kill it? So like if you play an A-Wing and they play, let's say if they're also an aggro deck and they play something on the other side of the board, is it more important to go first, or is it more important to be able to ping that extra damage? And that's kind of the question, that's where the question comes from, right? So against an aggro deck, do you care as much because you're not trading that unit? But against a control deck that's just going to wipe your unit off the board, that's 1 damage is not worth 5, period, ever.
Yeah, I feel like in an aggro mirror, you kind of want to take the initiative a lot, right? Just so you can get your hits in before they can drop a sentinel, or you can, if you have an A-Wing and they have like an arc, you can just kill the arc with the A-Wing. But if you have, the reverse isn't true, right? Because it's got raid 2, right? So they can swing into your A-Wing. Okay, if you have an A-Wing and the opponent has an A-Wing, whoever has initiative really matters in that one, because the first thing you should do is immediately kill the other A-Wing. Then you only take 1 damage back. Mm-hmm. So that's you have to like weigh that. Like you play an A-Wing, your opponent plays an A-Wing, you take the initiative. You are not pinging the bases. Let them ping the base if necessary.
Yeah. And so moving on
from mostly always trying to evaluate.
Yeah, it's just evaluating your position.
Yeah, you always have to evaluate. It's like, do I massively benefit from going first? Can I, play something like a sneak attack, my K2SO in here on first turn, and then now I have a 4/4 beater with overwhelm? Is that more useful than pinging the base for 1 or bringing out Sabine or something? So there's always... Okay, I guess like the first step is you look, does your opponent have lethal next turn? If they do, take initiative and try to deal with that. If you
hold on, you're jumping ahead, baby. You're jumping ahead.
I know. It's just that's relevant too for like this discussion. I'm sorry. I guess what are you trying to ask here?
All right, so we'll dial it back. We're going back to the turn 1. I think we've talked through turn 1, right? So then really the bigger thing is like, do you have any other resources or any other actions you can do? And that's kind of like, that's the question. Like with Sabine, it's obvious, right? You have that other 1 damage you can ping, or you don't have to ping. With Palpatine, you have the ability, if you have the resource, do you want to kill something? Do you want to put a damage on it because you're going to come out? You have to think about what other actions do you have that can be done? Because if you have no other actions, it's a simple, take the initiative so that you can swing first. But I will tell you that sometimes as a control deck, you don't want to be the first player because they have nothing on the board. You just want to basically let them do it. So sometimes it's better for them to be able to take that. In the 2 examples that I have here, right? I have the first example is I played Amadi, right? Like I have nothing else to do, just claim. I just want to be able to go first because I have Amadi and I want to be able to put that Sentinel Ozzel. Did I say Mahdi? I said Mahdi, right? So
yeah, Ozzel.
I have an Ozzel.
A lot different.
There you go. I have an Ozzel down, which Ozzel lets you ready a unit if you're first player. It's even better because they can't ready anything because everything's already ready. So it's a great play to be able to ready that other Sentinel unit that you have come out. If that's what you want to do, you could just take that Sentinel, you can make it ready, and you could say, hey, go ahead. If you can't kill this Sentinel in 1 attack, I'm just going to swing into your other thing, and I'm going to hopefully take out 2 units at the same time. So that's what you got to think about is like, do you have any other actions? Well, no. What is my next turn 1 action going to be? And that kind of leads us into the next side. Are you in control of your game, right? Like, what do you need to do to be able to be in control of the game specifically? And I think that's where that's when we start talking about, not do you need to take it specifically because you're going to be killed, because that's a whole nother scenario we'll talk about in a second. But this one is saying is, are you in control of the board? Are you not in control of the board? What do you need to do? In this example, I did not have an entrenched, but that Fang Fighter, for example, if I had an entrenched unit, I would want to turn around and say, I want to unentrench my unit so that it's able to do something other than just sit there and look pretty. In this case, in this example, it's I wanted first initiative. I gave up going second on purpose, or I gave up a resource or two the last turn specifically so I could play my Ruthless Raider to kill their unit before they could do anything with it. So I saved myself the 4 damage. I'm able to do 2 damage to the base on top of that, and now I have a ready unit. Now, can you imagine if I would have Azo on the other side? I can then ready that stupid thing too, and then attack with it. That's even better. So
yeah, if you play a lot of Ozil, it is like you understand how important like taking the initiative early, or like, you know, if you have U-wing out, like, is it worth taking the initiative, or is it worth doing 1 damage, right, or even 2 or 3? Sometimes it is more useful, especially with Ozil, just to take the initiative and drop a big thing next turn that's ready.
Yep.
I was playing a local of mine. He's running Blue Palpatine, and he's constantly just like taking the initiative early. He's like, he's got regional governors out there, and he's like, they do 1 damage. I'd rather be able to play something to mess you up next turn, or like drop an Avenger when you only have 1 unit, kind of thing, in order to like take it all. So it's sometimes like it's very important just to be like, is that 2 damage worth it, or should I just take the initiative so I can play more impactful play, or maintain control of the board state so they can't like worm their way out of it. It works too with like Sabine example you're saying with like the fleet lieutenants, right? If they have like an echo based defender and you have a fleet lieutenant like R2D2, you should take the initiative, play the fleet lieutenant, and kill their echo based defender before they can just kill your R2D2 and still be around and have 2 health left. So that is a very important thing you got to look at. It's just like, can I make a very important immediate impact on this board right now? And if you can, then it's worth, you know, you don't have lethal. Yeah, sometimes that's definitely something you need to consider.
yeah, and that's like, I know it feels like that's only a control thing, but I'm telling you, it is not. In this game, it is not a control thing. It is a game state, like a game ending state thing. I could tell you, for example, and I'll give another example. I was playing Red Palpatine, and I was playing against a Tarkin deck, and somebody had a beefed up TIE fighter. They swung into the base. They had 4 damage left on the base. They had 3 or 4 resources still available. They took initiative. Well, I still had 5 resources and another unit to swing in. That couldn't kill the TIE, but basically I couldn't kill their base or the TIE. Well, guess who had a Traitorous in their hand? I pulled their unit, basically cleared their board because they took initiative because they thought, oh, I'm just going to swing in. Now, again, traditionally, you would think that that's probably an okay play, but here now, Tanner has all the units. You can't ambush anything. You can't play anything ready unless you have something miraculously that does that, or you could run a Vader into something. But guess what? I just took control of your whole board state, and I'm not doing it as just to be the control player. I just figured you might as well not have a unit that could come into it. Now, the other opposite would be is if I had an overwhelming barrage, which ironically I did. I could have done it either which way. I could have overwhelming barraged it and then murdered the stupid thing and still cleared the board and then swung in, but it wouldn't have been lethal. So this allowed me to give my board an enhanced state, and then on top of that swing in, and then on top of that have, you know, the potential to be bigger next turn. So that's the bigger thing is, are you in control of the board? Are you not in control of the game? And, you know, different decks have different tempo sets of when you should be in control. If by turn 6 you're not in control with aggro, you're probably not winning the game. You're just probably not going to do it. You might, but you're probably not going to. If you're a control deck and you're playing against an aggro deck at turn 6, you got 4 damage left on your base, you're probably not winning that game unless you can heal a bunch, you know? So that's one of the big things.
Yeah, even like you know, I was playing Green Luke earlier today, right? The initiative is just like, I have to take this initiative early so I can play Obi-Wan down so they can not continue to attack me on the ground, right? Like I'm just losing some ground forces here. So if I could play a Sentinel like that, it helps immediately. And then if they can't kill Obi-Wan, then I could give them a shield with Luke. And then they can swing in again, and then I could bring out Leader Luke. And if they kill Obi-Wan again, I just get 2 experience and I draw a card. And but also like in the same thing, it's just like, do I want them to go first, swing in, then I can play Echo-based Defender and then give it a shield so it lasts longer, or do I want to take the initiative, play the Echo-based Defender, have that someone hit in there so I don't take the damage on the base? And that's really like game time decisions of how much health I have left on my base, right? For that kind of stuff. It really seeing how well you're planning for the next turn.
Exactly. The next slide kind of takes us into, do you want to trade or remove a value unit on your opponent's side, right? And that talks a little bit back to the last point of the control. And it does also, we'll talk to one of our final talking points of, are you going to lose the bloody game? Because like, if you're going to lose the game, you have to take control, right? And so like, in this case, can you remove a Boba Fett unit? If you do you want to, you don't need to take control right away. You can go through the motions, then do it. Is there a Luke? Do you know if they have, like, are they playing a Luke deck? Are they going to be able to play this bloody, stupid Luke after you kill something, and then they get to kill something for free, and you have no answer to it, because you probably have no resources, right? Is your Avenger the only card you have in your hand? Do you need to remove a unit to stay alive? In the event that they get so power the dark side, that stupid thing away from you? Or do you need to, or do you want to just use it as a control mechanism that sets you up for next turn? Those are the type of things. So do you want to trade or remove a value unit on your opponent's side? So that's the big question is, sometimes you have to take the initiative to be able to remove that unit. If you have no resources and you have a Luke Skywalker that's on, let's say, 3 health, and you have an open fire in your hand, you're taking initiative. Even if you can do 4 damage to base, are you going to swing into base or kill Luke? You can swing into base, they take initiative, Luke swings in turn 1, heals the 3, you did 1 damage to base, and you still got to kill that stupid thing. Is it worth it? I don't know. Probably not.
And there's been a lot of times where, like, oh, my opponent dropped an Avenger. I'm going to take initiative next turn, play Leia, exhaust the Avenger. Now, it's not, doesn't have the on-attack ability. There's plenty of times in the ability to reoccur, like that Leia for that specific example, where I'm like, I need the initiative so I can just exhaust this Avenger until I can draw my Vanquish, or draw something that can deal with it, or like continue doing enough stuff that I can win with that. So sometimes just taking the initiative so you can control their board, like especially against an Avenger, right? That where it has such a massive on attack ability, or like you were saying with Luke unit. Sometimes I'll let them play some units just so I can drop my Palpatine unit itself and just start wiping out their board. I'll let them build it up a couple times. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where if you have Super Laser Blast and you're on 7 resources, you don't want to play something because your card's going to remove all their units, right? Very rarely do you bring Iden out to just remove all their units. Though I will say, if they have 6 units out and you bring Iden out and you Super Laser Blast, I mean, it's 6 heal. Like, so it's not really a bad play in the long run of things if you need the healing. But if you don't need the healing, you definitely don't do that, right? That's not something you would do. So that kind of takes us to our last point. Oh, no, it doesn't take us to it. I have 2 more points. I apologize. I have 2 extra points. Does the opponent have a unit that needs the initiative? I forgot about this slide. I added this slide late. Does your opponent have a unit that needs initiative? So Cantina Bragheart is a great one, right? Like, if they play that turn 1 and then play a Benthic 2 tubes, do you want the initiative so you could kill that without taking damage back? Absolutely, right? Like, I sure as heck don't care as long as if I could kill that thing and not take any damage back, On their side, that Consortium Star Viper, I'll tell you on Saturday that I played a guy that we're in that in a, I think it was a Tarkin deck. No, it was a Krennic deck. I don't remember. It was a Krennic deck. He was running a Krennic green deck and he was running this Viper, and like he had 3 of them on the board at one time. And so when he was able to swing, he was restoring for 2. So if he doesn't have the initiative, if I have the initiative, yeah, you still are swinging in my base, but I'm denying you that 2 restore. So if his base has 3 or 4 damage on it, who gives a crap? You play around that. But if his base has 10, 15 damage on it, you might want to not let him heal for, 2 or 4 or 6, depending on what it is. And you may want to be able to take that. I put the Star Wing on there just because that has that, but really nobody plays that card. Nobody plays it.
Like Baze is pretty important for this too, right? Because if you have the initiative, you have Sentinel, and he's got grit, so it can be really nasty if you can't just outright kill him in one hit. So sometimes maybe taking the initiative early just to kill Baze or get past Baze into their base or something is pretty important. Granted, there's not like a crazy amount of like, oh, if you have the initiative, do X in this game, thankfully. But it does, there's some semi-relevant cards at least that have that. If you have the initiative, do X.
Yeah. And I bet we'll get more. So that takes us, there you go. Now we're into the last point, right? Do you have lethality, right? Like, are you on lethal? So in this example for here, these units, I have to take initiative if I can't kill some of their units because they're going to be able to do damage back to me next turn to eliminate it. So if I can't take out some of their units, again, this is a little bit of a bad example only because I only have 16 damage, but they're still going to be able to swing in with 9 this turn, and then next turn they're going to be able to, that puts them at 11. All they need is 11 damage. So do you have to do it to avoid lethal? So Alex, that was a point you were trying to make a little bit earlier. What is the idea behind when do you take it? Like, is there a damage ratio? Is it just basically like if you can't wipe the board out? What is it that you would want to take it before lethal?
Yeah, a lot of times they're like, oh, if my opponent has lethal, if they claim right now, like I have 6 health left on my base and they got a Luke, I need to claim this because if I swing in with another unit and they claim initiative, they just swing in and win. Which I've done, a bunch of times. But like earlier today, actually, I had an example. I had a redemption out. I was playing a Blue Iden, and like I just swung in or just swung and put them up to like 26 or so. And I'm just like, I claim. And then they played like 4 cards afterwards and healed with the Iden and basically just blew up all my ground units and everything. And I'm like, okay, next turn, swing in with redemption for the win. And he's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I gave up a lot on the last turn for it, but I had lethal, which, is a little bit questionable sometimes if they're able to heal past it. Like if he had like a Cargo Juggernaut in hand, I'd be kind of screwed. But sometimes it's like, well, if I have enough lethal and they're either low on resources or like I have 5 left to do on their base and I got a 6 attack guy in space and like a 7 attack guy in ground, they have 1 action. They're not going to be able to kill both of them, right? Unless, super laser blast or something like that, right? So, but if you take the initiative, they can't do it either way. So sometimes you just gotta see if you have lethal, and they're not like haven't played a card this turn kind of thing, because it's a little bit hard to account for that. You could just take initiative early and just end the game. Or if your opponent has lethal, you're just like, well, I have to end this early, if I draw like a U-wing reinforcement, so I get Sentinel in both lanes or something, right?
Yep, so exactly.
Yeah, if you're going, always evaluate the board, and you're like, well, I die next turn if they just claim initiative. I've claimed initiative and like not even played a card that turn. It was just like I swing it with my Devastator. I did 10 damage. I claim. I don't care about playing cards because I know you're not going to kill that thing and I'm going to win. So
yeah. All right. Any other thing? Anything else on taking initiative or?
And the more games you play, the more you kind of see these patterns. But if you're aware of the patterns, it helps.
Well, that will wrap up our Academy training segment on Taking the Initiative. Thank you all for joining us for our our Academy training segment about taking the initiative and why, when, and who, and why Alex is better about making that decision than I am, because most of the time I make it incorrectly. But that is another Academy of Training segment that we have in the books.